On September 26, 1960, something never done before happened. The first televised presidential debate. Vice President Richard Nixon versus Senator John F. Kennedy. And television would decide the winner in a way nobody expected. Those who listened on radio thought Nixon won, but those who watched on TV saw something different. They saw Nixon sweating, nervous, with a 5 o'clock shadow against pale skin. He'd recently been hospitalized and refused makeup. He looked unwell, uncomfortable, untrustworthy. Kennedy, by contrast, looked like a movie star. Tan, confident, relaxed. He'd prepared specifically for the cameras, understanding something Nixon didn't. Television wasn't about what you said. It was about how you looked saying it. Television had shown it could make or break careers. Politicians would never ignore the camera again. Fast forward 3 years. August 28, 1963. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. All 3 major networks broadcast it live. Between 200,000 and 300,000 people gathered at the National Mall. But millions more watched from home as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered what would become one of the most important speeches in American history. Television brought the civil rights movement into homes across America. White families in suburbs saw the passion, the dignity, the moral clarity of the movement. They heard King's vision of racial harmony. They saw the massive, peaceful crowd demanding justice. For the first time, many Americans confronted the reality of racial injustice not through newspaper articles or radio reports, but through their own eyes. Television made it real, made it urgent, made it impossible to ignore. The broadcast helped rally support for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Television had become a force for social change. And then came the day everything stopped. November 22, 1963, Dallas, Texas. President Kennedy's motorcade moving through Dealey Plaza. The assassination itself wasn't broadcast live. Cameras weren't positioned to capture it. But what happened next shocked the nation in a different way. At 1:40 p.m. Eastern Time, Walter Cronkite interrupted CBS programming. No video, just Cronkite at his desk, reading wire reports. The president had been shot, his condition unknown. Then, at 2:38 p.m., the moment burned into American memory. Cronkite removed his glasses. His voice cracked slightly. He announced that President Kennedy had died at 1 p.m. Central Time. For the next 4 days, all 3 networks suspended regular programming. No commercials, no entertainment, just continuous coverage of a nation in mourning. Americans watched the president's widow, still wearing her blood-stained pink suit, arrive back in Washington. They watched Lyndon Johnson take the oath of office aboard Air Force One. But the most shocking moment was yet to come. 2 days after Kennedy's assassination, millions of Americans were watching live coverage of Lee Harvey Oswald's transfer to a more secure jail. Oswald, the man accused of killing the president, was being escorted through the Dallas Police Department basement. Reporters surrounded him. Cameras rolled. Everything seemed routine. Then a man stepped forward from the crowd. Jack Ruby, nightclub owner, and in that split second, broadcast live to millions of horrified viewers, Ruby shot Oswald in the abdomen. America had just witnessed a murder. Live, on national television. This was television's power and its horror. It could show you anything, everything, whether you wanted to see it or not. After the darkness of late 1963, America needed joy. And on February 9, 1964, joy arrived with British accents and mop-top haircuts. The Beatles appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, and 73 million Americans tuned in. Let that number sink in. In a country of roughly 190 million people, 73 million watched this one show. A 45.3 rating, a 60 share. meaning 60% of all televisions turned on in America were tuned to Ed Sullivan. The camera panned across the studio audience. Teenage girls screaming, crying, fainting. Parents watched from home, confused by their children's hysteria over 4 boys from Liverpool. But they were witnessing history. The British invasion had begun. Rock and roll would never be the same. Musicians watching that night, future legends like Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, Gene Simmons, all say the same thing. That performance changed their lives. Nancy Wilson of Heart called it a lightning bolt from heaven, comparing it to the moon landing. For one night, America forgot its grief and remembered how to scream with joy. Speaking of the moon landing, July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11, Commander Neil Armstrong preparing to step onto the lunar surface. An estimated 650 million people worldwide watched, about 20% of the entire planet's population. Nothing had ever united humanity like this. Rich and poor, communist and capitalist, every race, religion, and nationality watching the same grainy black and white images. And then Armstrong descended the ladder. His foot touched the surface, and he spoke those immortal words that would echo through history. But what made this moment shocking wasn't just the achievement itself. It was watching it happen live. Seeing something impossible become real in your living room. The 1960s began with Kennedy promising to reach the moon by decade's end, and television let the world watch that promise fulfilled. This wasn't entertainment. This was humanity's greatest triumph, broadcast live to the entire world. Television had become the medium of human achievement. The same day as Kennedy's assassination, 5 years later, Star Trek aired an episode that would make its own kind of history. Plato's Stepchildren featured Captain Kirk, played by William Shatner, kissing Lieutenant Uhura, played by Nichelle Nichols, a white man kissing a black woman, on network television during prime time. It's widely considered the first interracial kiss on American TV. While some earlier, less prominent examples existed, this was different. This was Star Trek. This was NBC. This was millions of viewers in 1968, a year of racial tension and turmoil, watching a vision of a future where such a kiss wasn't controversial. It just was. The episode received surprisingly little backlash. Most letters to NBC were positive, but one station in Alabama refused to air it. The kiss itself was filmed in multiple takes, some with the kiss, some without, giving nervous executives an out. They chose to air the kiss. Television was grappling with race relations, slowly but surely pushing boundaries. The medium that had helped fuel the civil rights movement was now showing what progress might look like. Sometimes the most shocking TV moments are the ones that don't happen. November 17th, 1968. NBC is broadcasting an AFL game between the New York Jets and Oakland Raiders. It's a thriller coming down to the final minutes with the Jets leading 32-29. But NBC has a problem. The game is running long, and they're scheduled to air the movie Heidi at 7 p.m. Eastern. Kids are waiting. The movie is about to start. So at 7 p.m., with 65 seconds left in the game and the outcome still uncertain, NBC cuts away from the football game to start Heidi. Chaos. Absolute chaos. Angry fans flooded NBC's switchboard with so many calls that the system crashed. They couldn't even get through to complain. Meanwhile, in those final 65 seconds viewers missed, the Raiders scored 2 touchdowns to win 43-32 in one of the greatest comebacks in football history. Nobody watching on NBC saw it happen. The backlash was so intense that NBC executives immediately issued an apology. The network's president later admitted they'd made a mistake. And from that day forward, a rule was established. Sports broadcasts continue until the game ends, no matter what's scheduled next. One interrupted football game changed broadcasting forever. Today, it's known simply as the Heidi game. That same year, during the Army-Navy football game, CBS introduced something that confused viewers so much, they flooded the network's switchboard. They played the same thing twice: instant replay. Today, it's so fundamental to sports broadcasting that we can't imagine watching without it. But in 1963, viewers didn't understand what they were seeing. Did the player score 2 touchdowns? Was time moving backwards? What was happening? CBS had to explain to panicked callers that they'd developed technology to record plays and show them again immediately. Once people understood, they loved it. Instant replay became standard almost overnight. A technical innovation that shocked audiences with its novelty is now so ubiquitous, we barely notice it. The 1965 fall season opened with NBC announcing that nearly all of its primetime schedule would be produced in color. The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC, the announcer would intone before shows, accompanied by the famous NBC peacock. But here's what made this shocking. Most Americans still owned black and white TVs. Color sets were expensive, around $600, equivalent to over $5,000 today. So NBC was broadcasting color programming that most viewers couldn't see in color. It was a gamble. Would people buy expensive color TVS to watch color programming? Or would they stick with black and white? They bought the TVs. Color TV ownership exploded. By 1972, half of American homes had color sets. NBC's gamble had worked. They'd created demand by offering something viewers desperately wanted but couldn't yet access. Television wasn't just reflecting culture anymore. It was driving consumer behavior, changing how Americans furnished their homes and spent their money. But perhaps the most shocking thing television did in the 1960s was show Americans a war they didn't want to see. Vietnam became known as the television war, the first conflict Americans could follow every night on the evening news. Footage from the front lines, casualties, violence, confusion, all of it broadcast into living rooms during dinner. Walter Cronkite, America's most trusted newsman, visited Vietnam in 1968. After witnessing the Tet Offensive, he did something shocking for a journalist. He editorialized. He shared his opinion. On February 27, 1968, Cronkite told America that the Vietnam War was a stalemate. That victory wasn't possible, that America needed to negotiate peace. President Johnson reportedly said, "If I've lost Cronkite, I've lost Middle America." Television had turned public opinion against a war. The medium that politicians had learned to manipulate was now shaping policy. One trusted anchorman's opinion carried more weight than the president's. Not all shocking moments were tragic or controversial. Some just changed entertainment forever. On October 1, 1962, Johnny Carson walked onto the NBC Studios stage as the new host of The Tonight Show. He would stay for 30 years, becoming a television titan and setting the template for every late-night host who followed. Carson transformed late-night TV from variety show into conversation platform. His monologue, his desk, his interviews, the format he established, still used by Fallon, Kimmel, Colbert, and every other late-night host today, revolutionized how television entertained after dark. What made Carson's debut shocking was how quickly he made the show his own. Within weeks, he'd become essential viewing. The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson became American ritual. In a gentler shock, on Valentine's Day, 1962, First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy gave America a tour of the White House on CBS. A tour of the White House with Mrs. John F. Kennedy showcased the restoration work she'd spearheaded. It was elegant, cultured, educational, and 56 million Americans watched. The program won an Emmy. It showed Americans their history and heritage through the eyes of a First Lady who made culture and preservation important. Less than 2 years later, that same First Lady would return to the White House in a blood-stained pink suit. The contrast between these two moments, one so graceful, one so tragic, captured the whiplash of the decade. Perhaps most importantly, the 1960s taught Americans to trust television news more than newspapers. Walter Cronkite became the most trusted man in America. His sign-off, "And that's the way it is," became a cultural touchstone. When Cronkite said something, it was true. Network news expanded from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. Anchors became celebrities. News divisions gained prestige and power. The evening news became appointment television. Television news in the 1960s proved the medium could be serious, important, essential. It wasn't just the vast wasteland FCC Chairman Newton Minow had called it in 1961. It could inform, educate, and shape society. The 1960s television moments weren't just entertainment. They were shared national experiences that bound Americans together. When Kennedy died, the nation mourned together through television. When the Beatles performed, teenagers screamed together. When Armstrong walked on the moon, humanity celebrated together. When Cronkite said Vietnam was unwinnable, Americans reconsidered together. These weren't just broadcasts. They were moments when the entire country stopped, gathered around glowing screens, and experienced history as it happened. The shocking thing about 1960s television wasn't any single moment. It was how the medium itself became central to American life. Television went from novelty to necessity, from entertainment to essential. It brought the world into living rooms. It made the impossible visible. It turned strangers into shared witnesses of history. It gave Americans common references, common experiences, common memories. Today, we have thousands of channels, streaming services, YouTube, TikTok. We're more fragmented than ever. The idea that 73 million Americans would watch the same show simultaneously seems impossible now. The shared national experience television created in the 1960s may never exist again. But for one decade, television united America in ways nothing had before, and nothing has since. It shocked us. It moved us. It changed us. From Kennedy's assassination to the moon landing, from the Beatles to Vietnam, from integrated kisses to interrupted football games. The 1960s proved that television wasn't just a medium for watching. It was a medium for feeling, for experiencing, for being shocked. And sometimes being shocked is exactly what we need. It means we're paying attention. It means we care. It means we're alive to the moment. The 1960s taught us that television could do more than entertain. It could witness history. It could create shared memories. It could change the world. These shocking moments didn't just define a decade of television. They defined what television could be, what it should be, what it means to watch history unfold before your eyes and know that millions of others are seeing the same thing, feeling the same shock, experiencing the same moment. That's the power of television. That's what made the 1960s so shocking. And that's why, decades later, we still remember exactly where we were when we saw these moments. Because television made us witnesses. And witnesses never forget.